Hello, this is a special show, and we have a special guest today, Bob Thompson from Virginia, United States of America, to share the special story with you of transition, of persistence, and resilience. This is Let's Talk About It, and this is Bob Thompson. Hello, Bob.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
We're so glad to have you here for our guests, our listeners, because they don't have a chance to have heard your background. I mean, your wonderful ideas and so on, and your anecdotes that we heard before we came on air. And I'm so glad we had a chance to speak with you.
Awesome. I look forward to it, and I'm here to help in any way I can.
Well, Bob, many listeners and those who watch us on YouTube are now at the point where they are looking for ways to start over or looking for a way to turn something around and start something new because the life suddenly changed. And I know you have a story to share. So how did you jump from chemist to real estate agent?
Yeah, I was a chemist for 9 years. About year six, I kind of discovered that I didn't want to do it anymore. Quite honestly, is what it came down to. I had 15 bosses. It was a good job, a steady job, and I could have kept it for easily another 15 years after that. But I was at the point where I was just tired and I was just done. So I started looking into other things. Really, what it came down to is I had gone back to school to get my environmental protection degree, and I'm literally in freshman chemistry wearing a lab coat with my name on it, my own supplies, everything else. And after about the first two classes, I was like, I'm done. I was like, this is not where I want to be. This is not what I want to do. So I tried a couple of different things and looked into a couple of different things, and then got into purchasing rental property and found that, number one, I was a terrible landlord because I was way too nice and trying to do everything myself. And number two, I love the hunt, the process, the negotiation, all of the stuff that goes on and gives me that, I guess you would call it, that high that I get from when I'm in that process. So my ex-wife and I put a plan together. We originally had a 3-year plan. We got it done in 2 years. And in 2007, April of 2007, I walked out of that chemical plant at 35 and never looked back, and went full time into real estate and just walked away. And that was the first time I had ever had one job, because I had always had some sort of side hustle going on, whether it was real estate or eBay or doing something. So that was really the beginning. It took a while, but again, at 35, I finally managed to get it done and start moving forward in my life.
How courageous. I mean, when you told us earlier off air about your, growing up as a teenager and so on, did you ever imagine that you'd be where you are now? Kind of like, forgive me for saying it, like becoming like your dad?
No, and that's a funny thing, because I feel like there's a whole generation of, and I guess you would say I'm almost 52, so there's a generation of us Gen X kids that unfortunately didn't think far enough ahead or didn't put a plan in place. I posted something last week that people that make plans at a younger age seem to do better starting off than those of us that kind of really didn't have a plan and kind of stumbled into what they wanted to do a little bit later in life. I've got a friend of mine that, went to college, got a job straight out of college, didn't get into any trouble, just put his head down and worked, as opposed to somebody like myself that kind of wandered from here and far, probably, got into things he shouldn't have been getting into, played in bands, lived at home, acted a fool, chased women, all of this usual stupidities. And it took me a while to, quote unquote, become a grown up. And I think it would have been better if I'd have had a plan, but I also don't think I would be here where I am now, much less have any so-called advice or any thoughts to give either. So I guess it works out either way.
Yes.
Well, absolutely. And this is great when we're able to just find a passion and follow. Many people around the world stuck in a situation where they have to go to keep the job just to pay the bills. and the other side of the story, which where many of our listeners are, whether you're forced to change a career because your health condition or just basically health deteriorates without any diagnosis yet. And this is what our project is about, assisting these individuals. What will be your advice on how to discover that patient, how to discover that direction when it seems like everything around just failed?
Well, here's what I did, and that's kind of what got me to this point. And after my heart attacks and the bypass kind of brought in the motivational end of it, is I used what I call self-check. So I did a personal self-check, a professional self-check, and a monetary self-check, and sat down and tried to figure out what I wanted. Now, first, of course, I still had the chemistry job. So I figured, okay, well, what can I go do through that avenue? And of course, it was, well, you can go back to school. They're going to pay for it, blah, blah, blah. Well, I discovered very quickly that's not the direction that I wanted to go. So then it became a question of what else can I do, or where else can I find my passion? And it took a few tries. And then, of course, I found what I wanted to do. The financial self-check was ultimately the most important factor, because we discovered that, okay, if I'm going to do this and make a jump into real estate full-time, I'm not going to get a regular paycheck anymore. So let's start to work on our finances. And in that case, we paid off both the car payments and basically got to a point where if I was going to make less, at least I would be happier and we wouldn't have any debt. So by the time that I was able to walk away in 2007, we were essentially, other than the mortgage on the house, we were debt free at that point. Now, obviously, I switched over to my wife's, her medical at the time, and that was a factor in it also. But that's really what it came down to, was if I don't have to spend as much money, then I don't have to make as much, which means I can do something that makes me happier. And it's not all about, making X amount of dollars at the end of the day. And that will eventually come, which is what happened. Once I found my passion, I was able to, quite honestly, be very successful at real estate very quickly. The trade-off of that was that I had to reuse those tools again in 2018 when I had my first heart attack. Then I had my second heart attack. And then, of course, at that point, they went in to do the double bypass and ended up doing a quadruple bypass. And I had to relearn those tools in terms of professional self-check and persistent progress, and realize that whether I like it or not, if you don't work, you don't get paid. And that's the situation I was in. And I had to rebuild my business, unfortunately, reusing those same tools and moving forward again. So it's not easy. And I still have some health effects that I deal with on the daily, which is important that I work hard when I can. And then sometimes I just don't feel good and I have to take the day off, and there's nothing I can do about it.
That's a big aspect for many of our listeners, to find something that new business or new career that is flexible by time commitment. Well, from your experience, how important that flexibility?
Oh, I think it's everything. And I think if anything, I'm guilty even to this day of not using those flexible tools as much as I should. I have several things that I do weekly within motivation. I have my Wu-Tang rant of the week on Fridays, and I have other things. And then I'm realizing that a lot of these things I can schedule and plan ahead for. So I need to get better at using the tools that technology provides us with, because there are days when I just don't feel good and I'm not going to get anything done. So I almost have to, get out and farm and tend the garden, as it were, on the days that I can, log that time in when I can, and then walk away for a day or two if I need to. And we have so many options available to us now with technology that even I'm still learning there are things that I need to take advantage of, because I'm not going to feel good every day. And it's just the situation that I am, then we have to deal with it, unfortunately.
And that is magnificent approach to life, because there are many people, especially those that are, that your age. I'm considerably older than you are, but there are many people who just flat out don't feel like it for a variety of reasons. They're not lazy; it's just the way it is, and they have to pivot and make some make some changes in their lives. And you have managed to do that. And I applaud you for doing this.
I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It sucks from time to time. And nobody likes to feel like garbage when they're having a bad health day. But there's also not a whole lot we can do about it other than, okay, well, I'm going to breathe and I'm going to go take a break for an hour or two or a day sometimes, and we deal with it. And there's nothing we can do about it. So we acknowledge it and we move forward from there. I mean, none of us are asking to have a health crisis in any way, shape, or form, but there's also not a whole lot we can do about it other than try to maintain a positive mindset, because let's be honest, being angry and feeling sick doesn't make anything any better, in any way, shape, or form. So we have no choice in the matter, but just we try to make the best of it and keep moving forward. That's all we can do ultimately.
You kind of remind me of this new Peloton bike commercial the other day. I was telling my wife about it yesterday at a walk, where they talk about not breaking any records and trying to beat the other person. They said, just be yourself. Just relax. Just go out. The fact that you got up and got out there is really monumental step.
That's what I preach, the self-checks and the persistent progress, because at the end of the day, we're in charge of our own goals. It's not my job to, follow some sort of health guru and, take an ice bath at 4 a.m. or whatever. That doesn't,
yes.
You do what works for you to get through your day, and you try to create better habits for yourself. The other thing I would say is that when you're making these changes, what worked well for me, quite honestly, and this is what I tell a lot of young people, is work in the dark. Make your decisions and keep your mouth shut, because there's so much negativity. You don't have to tell everybody your business, because people will be negative across the board, regardless of what it is, or they have you pigeonholed into a certain area. I remember when I left the chemical plant in 2007, of course, we're in the middle of this, massive recession, in the United States at that time. And everybody looked at me like I was insane. Why would you leave this steady, great job and be a full-time real estate agent when you're not going to do as well? You're going to end up broke. And, you'll always hear that sort of negativity. And what I learned from that and what I tell people is just, again, keep your business to yourself until you're ready to, burst upon the world what you've got coming up next, and then go ahead and do it. But the best way to keep negativity out is just don't tell anybody your business, unfortunately.
Yes.
Don't listen to negativity. This is great advice. Bob, another not tool actually, but very important part of the progress, often reported to be a support system. Having relatives or friends, spouse, someone who is on your side and supportive. How big of the role you think it plays in progress in a way of when you transition from one job, career, and to another?
I think it's very important. And I also think it's fascinating, as I tell people now, we didn't have these options 30 years ago. Your support system was who was there locally. Nowadays, if let's say I wanted to be a screenwriter, I could go on to multiple online communities and write a screenplay. And then I'm going to find out very quickly if, okay, Bob, you've got some talent and you need to do this, this, and this. Or, you know what, Bob, you're not very good at this and you need to find something else. We need to have those options to us 30 years ago. There was been nobody in my local community that would have known anything about screenwriting or Hollywood or anything of that nature. So young people today have these magical powers of the internet that we just didn't have. So my support system can be, your spouse or somebody else. And sometimes it cannot be your spouse. I've been in those situations too, to where you can find people online that are of the same mindset of yours that you can use as a support system to get into anything that you're getting into. And I think that's why it's important to reach out to those folks that are of like mind. And even if it's from afar and from a distance, will support you. For myself, I listen to a lot of Les Brown. That's who I try to mirror a lot of my motivational speaking from. I'm not a big Tony Robbins rah-rah guy. I'm more of a Les Brown guy. And that's the thing about it, is not everybody is for everybody. You find somebody that resonates with you. I'm still listening to Les Brown stuff from 30 years ago because it's the same message, and it's still, even to this day, if I'm in a funk, will get me out of that funk, because it's like, well, what do I have to complain about? The dude came from absolutely nothing and built himself up into this great person that he is today. And if he can do it, certainly I can. Most of us come from middle class and or very humble beginnings, and we don't see the process unless we're a part of it. We just don't. We see the end result and we think it looks fabulous, but we don't see all of the work that goes into that.
Yes.
And I think it's important to remember that, and find, as I like to say, find our people, find our tribe. And sometimes it's going to be online these days, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that across the board.
Yes, there are very few overnight successes, aren't there?
No, there really isn't. And we don't see it. And not everybody is loud and braggadocious. You have people like, Robert Johnson, who, created BET. He built that up over time, buying different channels and doing his thing. Never really got into politics or got into, it wasn't a household name for years and didn't need to be, and put his energy into his community and his work that he was doing. And then lo and behold, he, created this massive organization, then of course eventually sold it and made his money and did his thing. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Not everybody has to be a household name.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a star within your own right, or even just with your own little world. And as long as you're happy and doing what you want to do, that's really all that matters at the end of the day.
Yes, it is. I firmly agree with you.
What will be your message or advice to those listeners who have let's say, a bad health day when you just don't know where to go, where to start, in addition to everything else you're dealing with?
I think what it comes down to is just, unfortunately, you have to be patient. And I struggle with that. A lot of times when we're starting to see a little bit of success, we want it to happen now. And it feels like, I describe it as like you've got a stack of stuff getting ready to fall over the mountain. And when it falls over the mountain, there's going to be all of these great things coming. And then we get a sidetrack and we have to wait longer, and we wait a little bit longer. And it's very easy to get impatient, but we just have to trust and know that it's going to work. And we just have to, we lose the day. Okay, so we lose the day. We keep moving forward. Or even if we just get one thing done in that day. So like in my case, if I'm having a bad health day, I'm going to at least take 20 minutes and return my emails or send some texts that I need to send out, or maybe try to think of a new concept or something that I'm working on. And then I'm just going to sit and relax and just take the rest of the day off and believe what my body is telling me, because unfortunately I've learned the hard way that if I don't listen to my body, you magically have a heart attack at 46 because, hey, dummy, you need to quit smoking and stop putting things into your body you shouldn't be doing. Yes. So you just have to learn from that and take that day off. And there's nothing wrong with taking a day off. And sometimes it's 2 or 3 days, but at the end of the day, if we don't listen to our health, we're only going to create more problems for ourselves, because we're going to end up back in the hospital or down and out for weeks at a time. And that doesn't do anybody any good.
My goodness, this is such excellent advice. You're the real deal, my friend. I'm so glad we had you on today.
I appreciate it. I'm always here to help, and I look forward to trying to help out in the future.
Thank you very much, Bob. Dear listeners, this was Bob Thompson. Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you for joining. And persistent progress and self-checks. Those are the keys and the secrets from Bob Thompson. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for having me.